We get to work with some really wonderful organizations, including, of course, Children for Change. So we're so thrilled that we were able to partner with them on this particular screening and to invite some members of the Children for Change community to join us. We have some really great special guests that are also going to be joining us for this screening. We're going to have a discussion afterwards with Melissa Fondakowski, who is the impact producer for the film, as well as a wonderful representative from an organization called Justice Outside. Dylan Kennedy will be with us. And then several student representatives of Children for Change, and we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about the film, the lessons that we learned from it, the making of the film, some of the different subjects and issues that are addressed in the film, and how they connect to things like climate change, and just be able to dig a little bit deeper into the themes of the film. So I hope you will stick around with us for that and enjoy that conversation. I also just want to thank, in addition to Children for Change being such a great partner, we have some really amazing sponsors and donors that make it possible for us to do some of these education programs that are always offered for free to students and to the community. So I want to thank our particular donors for DocLands education, the Nancy P. and Richard K. Robbins Family Foundation, the Marin Community Foundation, and Project Number 9. We can't do the education work that we do without their support, and they've been incredible, generous donors of ours for several years. So just a little round of applause for them. And for all of you for being here. So enjoy the film. Actually, I forgot to mention, we have one also very, very special addition to this program. In addition to the feature film, which you're going to watch, right after that, you're going to see another short film that is a behind-the-scenes making of the film. That's one of the things that's so incredible about this film is the difficulty and the challenges around making a film about going to the North Pole. Everything you see on screen is already going to look like an incredible, amazing challenge, but what you don't see behind the scene is how they actually made that film. It's easy to forget about that when you're watching something, that there's someone who's actually shooting that, who's doing all those things that you're seeing on screen, but you never get to see. So there's a really great short film you're gonna see right after the feature that goes into that, directed by Holly Morris, the director of this film, and then we'll come up and have that conversation after. So enjoy the show, and we'll see you in a little while. Thanks. I would love to welcome our special guests. Come join me, and I will introduce all of you. So starting out at that end, we have Melissa Fondakowski, who is the impact producer for Exposure. Next to her is Dylan Kennedy from Justice Outside. Then we have Isabella O'Brien from Redwood High School, followed by Eloise from Marin Academy, and Leyla Winton from San Rafael High School, members of, obviously, Children for Change, representing. So actually, can you start off, Melissa, by telling us what an impact producer does and what the impact campaign for this film looks like?
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. And that was actually one of the things I wanted to talk about, to introduce myself as an impact producer when most people have never heard of such a term. But basically, an impact producer comes into the film team when the film is ready to go out there into the world and be seen by audiences. A lot of times, an impact producer will come on earlier to try to identify some of the themes in the film that might be interesting for discussion when you go out to audiences and do stuff like this to engage audiences in particular discussion. So I can't remember the second part of the question that you asked, but some of the themes in this film are pretty clear, and I don't actually want to say them because I want to hear from you about what you think those themes are, and then see if they match what we think the themes are, because it's hard to, when you are an impact producer, to sort of see the film, and I was telling Dylan, like, I've probably seen it 700 times, you forget what's actually poignant after a while. You just kind of like, it's just like being in a habit and doing the same thing over and over. You just sort of aren't sure. You can't see the forest for the trees. So I'm actually really excited to hear from everyone today about what the salient points were for you and to see how they match up. And then I'll say more about what our sort of larger campaign is and what our goals are and what we kind of hope to achieve with the film out into the world. And it's a great lead in to Dylan Kennedy, who's here from Justice Outside, and I'll let you speak for yourself about the role. But we're teaming up with Justice Outside, the Exposure film team, to do some of that impact work together.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I go by they, them pronouns. And yeah, I'm here on behalf of the nonprofit that I work for, Justice Outside. Our mission is to advance racial equity in the outdoors. We do that in a lot of different ways: funding pathways, programs for individuals who are looking to access the outdoors, as well as those who are already working in the outdoor industry and wanting to kind of transform the field from within. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and talk about everything that we just saw on the big screen.
Hi, I'm Isabella O'Brien. I'm 14. I'm an art activist and reforestation activist, and I'm very excited to be here. I participated in the Redford Center Stories Challenge last year and the Planet 911 Youth Fellowship, which I really enjoyed, learning to make films about such important themes. And yes, I'm extremely excited to be here talking about this film exposure.
Hi, my name is Eloise. I am 15 this year. I go to Marin Academy in San Rafael, and I'm also a youth activist for climate change and broader human rights. So I'm really excited to be here with these amazing panelists and talk about exposure as a film and the role and the connection that it has to women's rights, human rights, climate change, and all of the broader topics today. So thank you so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Leyla Winton. I am 15, almost 16, and I go to San Rafael High School in San Rafael. And I'm a part of Children for Change for many years now, focusing mostly on climate change and hunger. But broader human rights has been a focus of mine recently as well. And I'm really excited to be on this amazing panel, as Eloise said, to connect exposure with so many amazing topics and just talk about the film as a whole.
So I'd kind of love to start off maybe there with as you were saying, Melissa, I'd love to hear what you guys, what were the themes that really stood out for you and what you took from it as far, because there are so many layers to it, but what was the thing that I would say maybe felt most impactful for you that you want people to sort of take away from it and be able to learn from?
Right. Well, for me, I guess just seeing them make it and to attain their goal was really impactful for me. I don't cry at many films, but this I actually did end up crying when they reached their goal of getting to the North Pole. And one of the main themes that I kind of took away from it was camaraderie and teamwork and just kind of pushing through. Because they did a really hard thing and they did it really well and they did it together as a team, and it was just really, really impactful for me to see them be so amazing.
Yeah, I can add to that too. I think teamwork was a major theme of this film, with collaboration for sure. And I think that it was really impactful to see people connect with each other among many lines of cultural differences in extremely difficult and tedious situations, and unify on an issue greater than just them, but for the bigger picture, on empowering other women to go out into the world and adventure and come to realizations about themselves that they may not have otherwise found.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. And something I found particularly impactful was seeing all these women of different religions in different parts of the world, them agreeing together, even if their beliefs were different, and them, like in the past, there's been major conflicts over people that believe Islam and versus Christianity, and I think it was very interesting to see this represented in a film, not making people separated, but bringing them actually towards each other, and not being able to work with everyone despite them being different to you. And that's one of the most important themes I think we can learn, especially to get through these years to try to make a better future for this planet. We're going to have to learn how to work with each other even if we have these big differences.
Leyla, sorry, did you want to add something, Leyla?
I was reminded of the aspect of the different cultures and races and religions that these women were. And one scene particularly stood out to me of when they were kind of talking about how some people in the Islam culture take multiple wives, and the people who weren't from that culture were asking genuine questions and were interested in learning. And it just was, by the end, they had all formed such a huge connection with each other, despite coming from different backgrounds and, upbringings. So it was just really empowering to see people get along with people that aren't the same as them. So I think that was another really impactful part of this.
And Dylan, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of how it connects to the work that Justice Outside does, directly, as far as, what that represents and how, and also how you think that this film could make a difference in the work that you do?
Yeah, definitely. I'll start off by answering that initial question, like, what's the impact? Because I have 3 words from the movie: no experience necessary. Like, that alone is like such an incredible thing to try to process. Like, these women came together. A lot of them not ever. I mean, this is like one of the most adventurous things you could possibly imagine. And these folks had not necessarily even been camping before, And so that has a lot to do with Justice Outside, the work we do, and how that impacts the climate movement, like the climate justice movement and environmental movement in general. Because the reality is the environmental movement, the mainstream environmental movement is very white dominated. And so the work that Justice Outside does is really trying to break down systematic barriers, bring people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color into the outdoors, and also elevate their voices and their leadership. Because like y'all have pointed out, climate change really requires all of us to come together and to do so in harmony. Not to say that there's not going to be conflict or there's not going to be difference, but that we need to embrace that transformation. We need things to be done differently in order for it to work. And so the work that we do with the Justice Outside does is really means to that end.
Well, and it's interesting too, because you guys brought up so many amazing elements of this film and the things that it brought out, and that ultimately that issue around climate justice and climate change, and it doesn't feel like a climate change movie, but obviously that's something that's underlying the whole. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, Melissa, from the perspective of even the structure of the film, and then how it impacts the way that you are handling the impact campaign?
Yeah, sure. Holly, I can speak for Holly on this one, is she didn't want to make a climate change movie. And in my role, I used to be the director of Redwood Center grants at the Redwood Center a few years ago. And that's when I originally met Holly, and when she was just starting on this film back in, I guess, 2016-ish. If she was following their training sessions over the 2 years before they actually launched the expedition in 2018. And she knew it was going to be environmental in nature just because of where they were going. You're going to the North Pole. You're going to be on this melting sheet of ice. You're going to have an experience with the climate. And so she knew there was going to be these themes related in the film, but she didn't want to make a climate change movie. And the reason she didn't want to make that movie is because if I asked anyone in this room right now, what was the last great climate movie you saw, you would either not know an answer to that question, or you would be afraid to share that the last movie you saw was kind of depressing and you didn't really want to watch it and it was really hard, and you sort of try to avoid those kinds of entertainment things. And so she didn't want to make that movie, because sometimes when you really overwhelm people with facts and statistics and IPCC reports and all of this kind of stuff, it becomes too overwhelming for anyone to know what to do with. And as an artist, Holly, and also me as an artist and someone who supports artists, you know that you don't want to leave your audience without a way out. You can't just dump on them and say, okay, have a good day, we got to fix this. You want to give them something that they can work with. And when I first when I even just saw a few clips of the film when Holly was looking for funding for it, I didn't see the full thing for a long time. I could see where she was going with it. She was really always focused on the women and how the experience would transform them. And she knew always that she wanted to take that experience because it wasn't just any experience. It was an experience in nature specifically, and that nature specifically, that made that transformative difference in their lives. And so that's how we sort of slide into climate here, that climate isn't the centerpiece. It can't be. People are, and what is our responsibility, and how are we going to, as Dylan said, very sort of perfectly, how are we going to work together to do that? Because we have to do it differently. And I think my favorite part of the movie that kind of pulls that all together is when Victor is, talking about women are good for hugs, but not good for expeditions. And, they didn't belong there. And then as you all were saying, it was really hard, and they did it, and they had no experience. Women do belong there. Like anyone belongs there. And so that's the climate movie that we're talking about. This is the change that's going to be in the future. People who, the white environmental movement, as you're talking about, doesn't think belong there, are going to bring in this new change, and we're going to do it together. And it is going to happen. And so, who do we want to be is a part of that transformation.
So can you guys talk a little bit about how you see film as a tool for climate justice? Obviously this film, as we've all been describing, but how important do you see that as playing a role? And this film being an example, but I'm just curious what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question and a really good way to segue into kind of like youth in this fight. And I think that film is an extremely important tool that can be used to appeal to the younger generations, because we're really seeing like a huge increase in technology nowadays. So I think that it is, it's a form of storytelling. It's like storytelling has been something that we have passed down from generation to generation for as long as we can remember. And we're really just modernizing this form of storytelling and using it as a media to bring it to a wide range of people. And I think that this film specifically, as a tool for climate change, was really impactful because it did just show how people are at the heart of this movement. And we really need to all work together collaboratively, because obviously teamwork was such a major theme, to have a role and in this fight for climate justice. And I think the intersectionality of like race and culture and gender and all of these different issues really add to this fight and make it so much more complicated. But the fact that we were able to see these women come together on so many levels without many similarities at all at the beginning was very powerful for me as a viewer. Yeah.
So this year in science, I'm taking biology, and we have seen countless documentaries about climate change. And as you said, they were all depressing and full of just facts being thrown at you, and they're also quite boring sometimes. And this definitely can make a lot of the students not interested in climate change, think that it's boring and all of these other things. But this is an amazing example of a film that's kind of supporting this underlying idea of climate change, but also making it, as Eloise said, like a story. It's showing this journey of these women, and also showing the hardships that they had to go through in this environment where, especially at the end when they had said that may have been the last group to ever reach the North Pole, that really hit hard for me, because it was after this amazing moment of they did it, and then it's this might be the last moment like this ever again. And so that was just kind of a reminder that climate change is happening. And, there's a lot of, especially the older generation that doesn't maybe believe in climate change or doesn't think that they can do anything about it. This is more than just facts. It's more than just statistics. It's experiences. And it's, showing actual footage of the impact that we've had on our planet. And it's, jarring, but also amazing to see, And then there's the aspect, like you were saying, the intersectionality of this film, which is incredible. It's not only empowering young women and young girls to fight for climate change, to explore, any environment, but it's also empowering young boys and young other children to see that women can do anything that men can do. And so they'll be raised in a generation that embraces all genders and, it's more equal. So I think that that's my take on it.
Yeah, that was an amazing point. Yeah. And what I was going to add about the storytelling aspect with climate change is that, especially on education with climate change, is that stories is particularly how we learn, and it's also how we get inspired to, and inspired to find hope as well, which is one of the themes I saw in that film. These very fierce, hopeful women trekking to this absolutely crazy conditions. It was very inspiring, and it felt like a story, and definitely it had a message and story. They have these messages that helps us, that they guide us through challenges, and so I think that it really opens minds, especially stories like that, which are so visually capturing. All those ice scenes, all those scenes where it's just white, and then those little red covers and the people trekking along. It was just very impactful. Amazing storytelling.
Thank y'all so much for bringing up storytelling, because it's so powerful. I'm a huge fan of storytelling. It's how we talk about what matters. It's how we determine what matters to us as a community. It connects us to each other. By watching this movie, in a way, like, we also got to go to the North Pole, and it's such a powerful tool for movement building, because it's similar to the way that when we bring folks out into the outdoors, or we help them get to the outdoors, and we are working on community building, connecting with one another, sharing each other's stories, and creating a story with each other. That is movement building. So when we're community building, we're connecting with each other, and we're connecting with the land. We have the opportunity to engage with the environment in healthy ways. Like, you become part of this ecosystem. There's this false idea that society and the environment are separate. That couldn't be further from the truth. We're all part of the planet, and storytelling helps us remember that. Storytelling helps us connect with each other, and by extension, like, everything else on this planet.
So we are sadly out of time, but I would let Melissa, if there's just anything you want to say to kind of wrap up this time. I just also want to thank you guys for such amazing, like, the way you've also woven all of the themes together and expressed them has just been remarkable. So thank you for that. And I just, if there's anything kind of when you want to end with, as far as what you want people to take away, and how they can also even spread the word about the film.
Sure, yeah. I don't have any ending words really, except for that what you three said really kind of knocks my socks off, because part of the goal with any kind of film like this, and specifically with Holly, is that it's not to get you to do anything other than take a look and see where you might fit, and what you might think about. And you don't know when that's going to come, right? You could say, oh, action item is recycle, or do this or do that. And maybe that's okay to do, but that's not your heart, that's just life that we live now. And I think taking a moment to go, as Dylan says, go outside, experience the outdoors, and find that in that thing in your heart that inspires you, and you'll know over time, what role you want to play. Maybe you want to be an artist and a storyteller, or maybe you want to, I don't know, do science in the Arctic on the ice if it's still there, in 5 years or whatever. I don't know, but you'll find it, But in order to find it, being in awe, I think, of the environment and being immersed in the environment is sort of a really important way to get there. So I thank you. Thank you all.
Could I offer one last thing?
Yes.
I would really like to invite us all to give a round of applause to the young people up here. Our 3 high schoolers, just like amazing, incredible, passionate individuals who I just met, mostly because like the youth have been used as the face of the climate movement for so long. It's like, oh, it's for the what about what are we going to leave to our children? And at this point, like, young people are leading this movement in real ways, and the mainstream just needs to catch up, needs to elevate their voices, recognize their leadership and everything that they have to offer, because they are the leaders. They're doing it, and we need to support them in doing that.
100%. So yes, a huge round of applause. Thank you all so much. Yeah, and thank you for this film, Melissa. It was really awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you
Joanne.
guys for coming.